Today I'm going to show you how to make this bracelet. It is like a curved little shape and it is super cute, so I hope this tutorial helps you today. Let's get right on with it. So I have all my strings prepared here. I did a loop start, and you can either just tie a knot at the top or do whatever start you want. I have a short video that I will put a link to of this start if you want to watch that. But now we're going for the bracelet. So we are going to have 7 base strings in total. You can make these whatever color you want. You can make them all one color, but basically these are going to end up being the color of like our ends, and so I just made it the colors of the bracelet. And I am just going to set them out. I have an extra string right here because I used it to do the loop start, and so I'm just going to use that as my first blue string, so I'm moving it over to this side. So these are your base strings. You can make them all one color. I made them the same color as the bracelet because then when I finish the bracelet, it'll like go with the color scheme. So here's our pattern. It starts right here, and for this we're gonna make it shaped. So for every black string that's on the side of the row, we're going to group those in with that first knot. I'll show you how it'll work. We're gonna do the first row. Hopefully you have a basic understanding of forward and backward knots and forward backward knots, but if not, that is totally fine. This is more advanced bracelets, so there are tutorials on my channel with easier bracelets if you need. So we're just gonna get started. So there is one string next to that. So instead of just tying onto this string, we're gonna group these 2 strings together and we're gonna tie with our blue. And we're just gonna do a forward knot, which is 2 of these motions with this 4 shape. Then we have one more blue forward knot, so we're gonna do that. So we did 2 knots on this one, on our next one, and then we're gonna put this one up and out of the way. So we just put it up there. Now we're going to add in a color. So we are adding in yellow. So I'm going to unravel this slightly, grab a piece of tape, and tape it down just kind of up here, kind of close to the top. So we're going to add this in right after the one we tied on the blue. So we're going to be doing 2 forward knots with this. But first we're going to do a color switch. You're going to make the first half of our knot, and then this string that we put up and out of the way, or we're going to put on the left of this right string that we're pulling up. We're going to pull it underneath, and then we're going to tie the second half of our knot on this string. The first one that you do to do a color switch is always the hardest, especially on a bracelet that's skinnier like this, because the string kind of goes everywhere. So you just have to make sure that you're pulling tight and you're pulling carefully so that it ends up at the top like that. But now that we're done with this blue string, we're going to take it and put it underneath the rest of the strings. So now we're going to take this yellow string that we were tying with, and we're going to tie onto our next string. So yeah, one more forward knot. Then we're color switching to pink. So we're putting this one up and out of the way. We're going to tape this one in there, just similar to how we taped the yellow one. And then we're going to grab our next string. Right now the order does not matter. It will after this row, because this row is kind of gonna get them in the order that they're supposed to be. But I'm gonna do a forward knot like this. And then the yellow string that we put up and out of the way is going to be on the left side. We're bringing it down underneath that string, making the second half of that forward knot, and this will just be swapped for the backward knots. And then we put that one up there, bring the yellow underneath this last string, bring this one back down, and make our final forward knot. Now that looks very complicated on this bracelet. It's a lot easier to see on other bracelets on my channel. This is more of an advanced bracelet, so if you need to go practice with those bracelets, that might be a good idea. Like a chevron or a striped is what I would recommend. But if you're feeling good about this, keep on watching. So now we're done with that row. We're gonna move on to our next row. As you can see, there is one black string right there, so we're gonna group those 2 together. So exactly the opposite of what we did on the other side. And we're keeping this in our pink or red color. So we have our 2 strings right there that we're grouping together. And we're gonna do a backward knot onto those. So that's 2 of those shapes. And we're putting that up and out of the way. Now when we do color switches, which we actually are gonna do 1 more knot with the red, I forget. So we're gonna do 1 more of those, then we put it up and out of the way. We're gonna lift up all these strings that we had before and bring the yellow underneath all of them. And our next string is going to be that color switch. So we're gonna do our E shape and then pull that string up. We're gonna have it on the left side of our string that we are switching from. So it's the opposite of last time. Bring it down and around the other way and then make the second half of our backward knot. So it's basically like mirrored from the other way. Now we're done with this string, so we just want to make sure we put it underneath the rest of those strings. And then we can move on and make 1 more backward knot with the yellow, and then we'll switch to blue. And then it's going to be very similar to that every time we do color switches. And yes, I promise that the color switches are a lot more simple to understand when it's a bracelet, less like complicated than this, when it's not a shaped bracelet and things like that, and when it's like a little bit bigger so you can see. But hopefully this makes enough sense. Then we're gonna do our last blue backward knot, and I'm gonna do a backward forward knot on all the edges so that it'll be like straighter edges, but that is just something that you learn with time. So if you're like newer at this, you don't have to do that. So now we are going to be doing 1 blue forward knot, and then we're going to be switching to yellow. So I put that up and out of the way, bring that yellow underneath, grab this one, and we're doing half of our knot, bringing that blue down and around, making the second half, and moving the blue underneath. Now we have 2 more, or like 1 more yellow and 2 more red. And this time on our last knot, we're going to be grouping 3 strings into a bunch instead of just 2. So we're done with that yellow, bringing the red underneath, and we're going to be doing 2 knots, 1 on 1 string, 1 on 3 strings. So this will be our color switch right here. Bring that yellow string through it, do a knot like that, bring the yellow string underneath, and then this one is going to either be just a forward knot or a forward backward knot if you're doing what I'm doing, and that is the end of that row. So it's starting to be shaped and it's coming along really good, but we are going to continue. This time we're going to be adding a string to this first knot that we're going to be doing. So I'm doing a forward backward knot, but you can just do a backward knot to start it with the red, and we're only doing 1 of those. Then we're going to put it up and out of the way. We're going to switch to yellow, and we're doing 2 knots with the yellow, and then that last knot will be a blue. So I'm going to do that real fast. Then for our next row, we're starting it off with just another blue knot onto this string. So a forward knot. Then we're going to do 2 yellow knots, and then 1 red knot again on all 4 of those strings that we did it on before. Make sure you're pulling these knots tight so that it actually creates shape with the bracelet instead of just making it loose and like slightly wobbly. So now we are at this point. We're going to be doing row 6. As you can see, a good rule of thumb is that if we're doing a knot with there's 3 strings next to it, we're doing 4 strings, like 1 more of each. So Since this one is 2 strings next to this, we're going to be doing 3 strings in this first knot. So since there's already 4 bunched together, we're just going to pull one of those out. We're tying with this knot, with this string still, because this is the one we tied with last on this one, and it's our red string that is tying onto the bracelet. And we're just going to do a backward knot on these 3 strings. And then since there's another pink one or red one, we're going to be doing 1 knot with that on this string that we pulled out of the bunch. And then we can color switch to yellow. We're going to be doing 2 yellow knots and then 1 blue knot. So I'm going to do that really fast, but I'll show you the color switch. So I put that up there, pull this underneath it so that when we tie the second half of our knot, it's in there with that. And then we're going to take that red, put it underneath the rest of the strings, 1 more yellow knot, and then we're going to switch to blue. Then we can move on to our next row after this. Okay, so this next row starts with 2 blue, and then it's going to be 2 yellow, 2 red, and then that last red is going to be 2 strings grouped together. So I'm going to start by doing my blue, 1 of them, and then our second blue, and then we're going to switch to yellow, and we're going to do 2 with that. And you're gonna need to pull another string out of this bunch for those 2 knots. So it doesn't matter which, as long as it's like within that bunch. And then we're also doing a color switch on this row. I feel like the hardest part about it being so small is just that all the strings are like getting tangled together as I make it. And then we're gonna move that blue down underneath the rest of them. We got this 1 more knot with yellow. And then we're gonna switch to red. So bring this underneath all the strings. We're gonna separate another one of these strings from that bunch and do the first half of my knot, do the color switch, second half of my knot, move this underneath the rest of the strings, and this is just 2 more strings at the end, and we're bunching those together. So I'm going to do my last knot with the red on those 2 strings, and there we go. We are done with that row. So now we're moving on to this row where it's going to be all separate except for the last one over there. So we're going to separate those 2 strings and do 2 knots of red on those. Like that. And then we're going to color switch to yellow, and we're going to do 2 knots of yellow. There we go. All of these are backward knots since we're going to the left. And then because on here there's 1 string next to this, we are going to be bunching those 2 together. So doing, we did 1 knot with blue, so we're bunching these last 2 strings together and doing 1 more knot on that. And you might be able to see at this point your bracelet start curving. And it's going to curve back and forth when we're finished with it. So that's kind of exciting. We've gotten far enough you can see this progress. Now we're going to move to the next row. We're going to be adding a string into this bunch of these blues, and we're going to do a forward knot on them. And then we're going to do one more blue knot, and then we'll do 2 yellow knots and 1 red knot on the rest of these strings. Now for this next row, we have for this next row, we're going to start with one of the red knots on this last string, the one we just tied it onto. And then we're going to do 2 yellow knots. And then for after that, we're going to do 1 blue knot, and it's going to be over the rest of the strings. It's going to be grouped together, is what I mean by that. So I will show you. We're doing the 2 yellow knots right now. And now that I've done the 2 yellow knots, I'm going to do a color switch with blue. But instead of just doing 1 string, we have 4 strings bunched together because there's 3 strings next to it on the pattern. So I'm going to do the first half of that big knot. I'm going to string the yellow through and do the second half of that big backward knot. And there we go, we are done with that row. So this next row also starts with the same thing. We're just doing it with blue. And we are bunching over all 4 of those strings. Then we are switching to yellow and doing 2 knots with yellow. And then we will do 1 knot with red. At this point, I need to retape it because every time I pull, it like starts to move, and so I'm just gonna add some new tape to the top so that it does not come flying when I pull too tight. All right, so we finished that row. Now we're going to start with another 1 red knot. It's gonna be a backward knot, and after that we're going to do 2 yellow knots and 2 blue knots. So that means in the second blue knot there's going to be 3 strings in that knot. So we've done our 1 red. We're going to bring the yellow underneath, and we're going to do 2 knots with that. First one's color switch. And then move this red one out of the way once we're done with it. Then we're going to do a blue knot, and then a second blue knot on the rest of the strings. So 1 blue knot on 1 string, and then a blue knot on 3 strings. Once we move that underneath, you might need to push up the knot slightly like I had to. And there we go, we are done with that row. So this row, row 13, is where the whole pattern repeats. So now you can go through the video. Once you reach this row,
which is the row that we just did,
you can restart the video and just keep doing that pattern and keep following that until you get to make the bracelet as long as you like it. So technically I've already filmed what I'll be doing for this whole video, so you just go back and watch it again if you need to get like help with the pattern again, and then we will finish it off and you're done. Okay, so it's not quite as long as I'm going to make it when I finish it, but I'm a bit behind schedule for the video. So I'm just going to show you how to finish it off with this length. I'm going to cut off all the strings that are like hanging out and extra. Not these ones that are like the bass strings, but these color strings, these 3. You can either add them to the bottom or you can cut them off. I'm probably going to end up adding them once I'm finished. And then you're going to do 2 separate twisties, and I will make a short about that tomorrow or tonight and show you how to finish off any bracelets like with a loop start. But hopefully if you know how to do that, this tutorial just showed you how to make the shaped bracelet. I think it turned out so cute. I think it would look so cute with different colors too, and the back actually looks really cool too. So I hope this tutorial helped you. Just make sure to comment any questions you have, or let me know, or message me on Bracelet Book. And I hope that helped you. Have a great day and keep on knotting.